What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at two great fighters, Kid Chocolate, the Cuban Bong Bong, and Joseph Sandy Sadler. Now, both of these men were featherweight champions and junior lightweight champions. They held both titles. But what I want to look at is who had the better career. And the way I'm going to break that down is to take a look at both fighters' careers, look at the champions they fought, how many title opportunities they had, how many fights they had, circumstances in which they had to overcome, and what was going on in their era. So join me in this discovery between Cubans Kid Chocolate and originally born Boston, Massachusetts, but then moved to Harlem, New York, Joseph Sandy Sadler. Now we're going to start off with Joseph Sandy Sadler. He was born June 23rd, 1926 in Boston, Massachusetts. He stood 5 foot 8.5 and weighed 116.5 to 134.5 pounds. He was managed by Charlie Johnson and trained by Jimmy Brooks. He unfortunately passed away September 18, 2001. Now, Sandy Sadler had a fighting record of 145, 16-2, with over 100 knockouts. He had 2 exhibitions. And the thing about Sandy Sadler, he retired undefeated champion. He had to retire because of an eye injury. He wound up developing cataracts in one of his eyes. And what's interesting about Sandy Sadler, he was in some wars with Willie Pep, and I'll get into that. But Willie Pep would have his license revoked for 2 reasons. Number one, it was a suspicion that he threw a fight with Lulu Perez in New York. So his license was revoked in the state of New York. And that's where you got most of your major fights. And the other reason was because of the tactics, the dirty tactics he employed on Joseph Sandy Sadler. But Sandy Sadler was in there with some great fighters. He was in there with fighters such as Percy Gabbett Lewis, Phil Terranova, Joe Brown, Jimmy Carter, Orlando Zulueta, Willie Pep several times, Harold Dadd, Laura Solis, Charlie Riley, Del Flanagan. Del Flanagan had another brother who was also just as good. Patty DeMarco, Percy Bassett, Jackie Blair, Teddy Red Top Davis, Davey Gallardo, Gabriel Little Flash Elorte, Ray Famachon, Tommy Collins, Lulu Perez, he knocked him out in 3 rounds, Terry Young, and Kenny Davis. Now, I'm going to name the champions he faced during the course of his career. He faced Joe Brown, who was lightweight champion of the world. Took the title away from Wallace Bud Smith. Lost the title to Carlos Ortiz. Jimmy Carter, who took the title from Ike Williams in 1951, and he would lose the title to Wallace Bud Smith. Willie Pep. Willie Pep took the title away from Chalky Wright and lost the title to Sandy Sadler. Harold Dadd wound up becoming a champion as well. He was a phenomenal fighter, was Harold Dadd. Now, he had several losses in his career, but it was due to certain circumstances. Patty DeMarco, who became lightweight champion when he defeated Jimmy Carter. He was in there with very good fighters with Sandy Sadler. And when you take a look at Sandy Sadler, he was a lean, tall, lanky fighter. But Sandy Sadler could punch. He was very strong and powerful featherweight. But he punched like a junior welterweight. He was a great featherweight and junior lightweight champion with Sandy Sadler. Sandy Sadler was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1971 and the World Boxing Hall of Fame in 1982. as well as the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990. Now the thing about Sandy Saddler, he fought often. From 1944, he fought 22 times. He fought 3 times in March, 1 time in April, 3 times in May, 3 times in June, 3 times in July, 2 times in August, 4 times in November, 3 times in December. Who do you know does that? 1945, he fought 24 fights. He had 15 fights in 1946, 19 fights in 1947, 18 fights in 1948, including an opportunity for the featherweight championship by defeating Willie Pep in Madison Square Garden. He knocked him out in 4 rounds. 1949, he had 16 fights. Although he was champion, he was still active. He lost in 15 rounds to Willie Pep and lost the title. But he would eventually regain that title from Willie Pep. In 1950, he had 14 fights. 1951, he had 13 fights. Now, 1951 was some year because that title changed hands in all weight divisions. Now, Rocky Marciano would knock out Joe Louis in Madison Square Garden, knock him out of the ropes in 8 rounds, and he retired Joe Louis. Ezard Charles would be knocked out by Jersey Joe Walcott, and Walcott would take the title away from Ezard Charles. Sugar Ray Robinson would knock out Jake LaMotta in 13 rounds. That fight was known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He would stop him in 13 rounds, and Jake LaMotta would basically state to Ray, "You didn't knock me down." Jimmy Carter knocked out Ike Williams for the lightweight championship. And like I said before, he became the lightweight champion. Joe Brown would face a fighter by the name of Jackie Wilson. So he had some great fights in 1951. Not to forget that Ray Robinson would lose his title in 51 to Randy Turpin, in England. But he would regain the title in 1950, later on that year, at the Polo Grounds by knocking out Randy Turpin. 51 was a phenomenal year. 1952, he had 3 fights. 1954, 9 fights. 1955, 7 fights. 1957, Sandy Saddler announced his retirement from the game of boxing. In 1971, he boxed exhibitions, and he was scheduled to face Willie Pep. For some strange reason, it didn't happen, and later found out that Willie Pep was suspended from the game of boxing. Now, Willie Pep would be suspended for allegations that were placed upon him with a thrown fight in New York with a fighter by the name of Lulu Perez. And during the course of that investigation, along with the dirty tactics, referee Ray Miller gave a suggestion to the State Athletic Commission that Willie Pep should no longer fight again. Sandy Saddler was not suspended from boxing, but due to public opinion, on paper they just stated, due to his eye injury and medical condition, we will take away his license as well. But Sandy Saddler retired undefeated. Now, September 8th, 1950, Willie Pep and Sandy Saddler would get it on in New York's Yankee Stadium. Willie Pep weighed 124 3/4 pounds. He retired in the 8th round after Dr. Nardiato had asked him, "Are you going to come out for the 7th round?" I'm sorry, for the 8th round, because he was in between 7 and 8 rounds. And Willie Pep stated that his shoulder was bothering him and he couldn't continue. And Dr. Nardiato walked over to Sandy Saddler's corner with a grimace and a laughter matter. That Pep quit. Can you believe it? That Pep quit. Amazing. The fight took place in Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, New York. Now, Willie Pep, that was his 4th title defense. 2nd reign as featherweight champion. The referee was Ruby Goldstein. And Goldstein, up until that point, had it 5-2. Jeff Young Odo, who was a very good fighter in his day, had it scored 5-2 as well. And Jeff Frank Forbes had the fight scored 4-2 and 1 even. Sandy Saddler was an 8-5 betting favorite. A crowd of 38,781 totaled the gate of $262,150. All records for featherweight championship bouts. Records of the past, 33,389 and 134,416. That was broken from Eugene Creek when he defeated the Scotchwop, Johnny Dundee. That fight took place at the Polo Grounds, July 26, 1923. Now the net gate was $2,006,428. Pep received 45% of the gate. Sandy Saddler received 15% of the gate. Unbelievable. Now the first two fights of Sandy Saddler and Willie Pep were on television and radio. The third fight was on neither. No one took that fight serious, but it turned out to be one of the best and one of the dirtiest fights of their round robin. Willie Pep and Charlie Riley fought in 1950. I want to go through some fights that took place that year. Jody Maxim and Freddie Mills. Rocky Marciano and Roland Lestraza. Vic Towle and Manuel Ortiz. Ezra Charles and Joe Louis. Ray Robinson knocks out Jose Pessoa in 3 devastating rounds. Sandy Saddler, Willie Pep. Fascinating year for boxing, 1950. So that's it for Sandy Saddler. Extraordinary career. Extraordinary time in which he fought, and great fighters around him. Let's take a look at the Cuban Bonbon, Kid Chocolate. Now, Kid Chocolate, better known as the Cuban Bonbon, was born January 6, 1910 in Havana, Cuba. He died August 8, 1988. He was 70 years of age at the time of his death. He died in Havana, Cuba as well. He was a fascinating fighter. Was a Cuban Bonbon. Now, Kid Chocolate stood 5'6" and weighed 126 pounds to 130 pounds. He had a 65-inch reach, had over 100 amateur fights, with 86 by the knockout route. Now, all his amateur fights were in Cuba. But as a professional, he had total bouts of 152. 136 wins, 51 KOs, 10 losses, and he was stopped himself twice in his career. Kid Chocolate sparred with great champions such as Benny Leonard, the Ghetto Wizard, and Little Arthur, Jack Johnson. He was in there with fighters such as Chick Shuggs, Phil O'Dowd, Johnny Vaca, Fidel LaBarba. Fidel LaBarba was a fascinating fighter himself. Here you have Fidel LaBarba. I'm just going to show you one of the opponents of Kid Chocolate. Very good fighter was Fidel LaBarba. Dominique Patrol, Jackie Kid Berg, Benny Bass. Matter of fact, Benny Bass lost his junior lightweight championship belt to the Cuban Bonbon, Kid Chocolate. He would lose to Petey Hayes. He would defeat Buster Brown. He would face Simon Chavez and lose to him. Tommy Paul, he would have a draw. Eddie Stein, defeat him. He would have an outstanding career himself. The Kid Chocolate. Now, Kid Chocolate lost his featherweight championship strap. Battling Ballino, 15 rounds. Unfortunate decision for the Cuban Bong Bong. That fight took place December 12, 1930. Now, Kid Chocolate would defeat Junior Lightweight Championship title holder. That would be Benny Bass in Philadelphia. In a 7th round knockout, it was scheduled for 15 rounds, July 15th. Now, before a crowd of 4,000, Kid Chocolate lost his Junior Lightweight Championship to Frankie Click, December 25th, 1933. The Kid was killed in 7 rounds. Now, Kid Chocolate would be introduced into the Boxing Hall of Fame 1994, along with Benny Bass and Tony Canzoneri. Now, some of the fights that were going on at his time in 1930. Jimmy Slattery. Jackie Kid Bird had defeated Mushy Callahan. Midget Wargas defeated Black Bill. Max Melling defeated Jack Sharkey. Maxie Rosenblum defeated Jimmy Slattery. Panama Al Brown defeated Eugene Hall. Al Singer defeated Sammy Mendel. Tony Canzoneri defeated Al Singer. Battling Ballino defeated Kid Chocolate. That's when he would lose his featherweight championship belt. Frankie Gennaro and Midget Wargas. Just to name a few fights. But these were the fights that were going on in 1930. I would have to go with Sandy Sadler on this one. He was in there with better fighters. But one thing I have to say, Kid Chocolate came around at a time it was almost impossible for a black fighter to get a shot at any title. He influenced my number 4 rated fighter, Henry Armstrong, to get into the game. Henry Armstrong was working on a railroad, and a newspaper hit him in the leg, and it stated that Kid Chocolate had won the Junior Lightweight Championship of the world from Benny Bass. And once Henry Armstrong realized how much money that Kid Chocolate earned, he decided to go into the game of boxing. But Kid Chocolate didn't have the amount of fights that Sandy Sadler had. He didn't retire undefeated as featherweight champion. Sandy Sadler went up to junior lightweight as well. So for the sake of argument, I'm going to go with Sandy Sadler. Better career. But no denying the Cuban Bong Bong's outstanding fighting style. In fact, Sugar Ray Robinson had admired Kid Chocolate and said, if I can only box like that. Salute to the Cuban Bong Bong, Kid Chocolate, and Joseph Sandy Sadler, two of the greatest fighters of all times. It's been fun. Thanks for hanging in there with me on my comparison of my two greatest featherweight champions in the history of the game, Kid Chocolate and Sandy Sadler.